Hello, everybody, and welcome into Bad for Baseball, the baddest baseball podcast on the internet, presented to you by Betway. My name is Nicholas Playlog, joined alongside by Adam Peddle. We are now in the thick of the offseason, honestly closer to next season than last season at this point. I was thinking about that the other day, and it's time to start looking at some of the winners and the losers of this MLB offseason so far. I know that Santander's still on the board and Bregman's still on the board and everything like that, but you've seen enough moves happen at this point to start to get an idea, a picture of what your team's going to look like in 2025. We're going to talk about who's going to be good and who's going to be not so good following these offseason moves. Before we get into it, guys, please make sure to hit that like, smash that subscribe button. Let us know your thoughts about all of this in the comments down below. Now, I imagine that a lot of these viewers have kind of like some loose ideas walking into this thing. Just off the top, before we even break down anything, for you right now, who do you have as the biggest winner, Adam, this offseason?
Well, I mean, it's hard to go wrong with the LA Dodgers, but, you know, for the sake of sounding like a broken record, like everybody out here is going to be saying LA Dodgers, I truly do think it's the New York Yankees, and that might be a little bit more, contentious because they did lose Juan Soto. But I think they did everything right. I mean, you think about the complete, three aspects of their team: bullpen, starting pitching, and the lineup. They completely revamped it in a way that I didn't even think was possible, right? The Yankees, I'll say it off right here. We already know the moves. You know, you lose Soto, you get Max Fried into your rotation, you go and you trade for Devin Williams, one of the best closers in baseball. Like that's huge. In a market I didn't think he was even going to be in this offseason, he gets traded. You go trade for Cody Bellinger, you sign Paul Goldschmidt. Like, those are two guys, veteran guys in their own right, that can fill out your lineup. That's phenomenal, and I really think that's kind of the best way you can go about it if you're the New York Yankees after losing Juan Soto.
Yeah, no, I do believe that, like, just across the board, like, you know, I guess to your point, like, they did do everything right? You know, like, you can't criticize anything that the Yankees did, even their pursuit of Juan Soto. It's like they went right up there to $760 million for better or for worse. Like, you know, and who knows? Maybe he goes to the Mets and he's terrible, or, you know, like, he gets injured or something like that, right? And then you're going to look back at that in hindsight and be like, okay, well, you know, that was a good place to stop.
And all the rumors out there are like, I mean, the way he's been acting ever since signing with the Mets, it's like, there was some weird kind of bad blood between him and the Yankees. You know, the organization, maybe some of the players. Like the fact that he didn't even talk to any of the players after the World Series from the New York Yankees.
Yeah, that was strange.
It's obvious. Like, I mean, you know, that silence is louder than words, I guess. Because if you're not talking to anybody, it's like, well, I don't really want to like lead you on, or think I don't really want to reveal my intentions right now, because my intentions are I'm going to leave you this offseason.
Or he's just not tight with any of those guys.
Maybe he's not tight. Well, yeah, because think about, like, he gets traded over there, and sorry Yankee fans, but like he's been there for 1 year. He doesn't really owe you anything. And I said this point, like he never owed the Padres anything. He never owed the Yankees anything. Hell, he never even owed the Capitals, the Washington Nationals anything. This team that literally brought him up. Like, he doesn't owe anybody anything. He's going to go and find his own team, right?
Yeah, 100%, man. But they navigated that entire situation beautifully, right? And you look at that lineup and you look at their starters now, and I mean, like, the rotation for certain is like right up there as being one of the best in baseball, I think. Obviously Garrett Cole is still phenomenal, followed by Max Fried. Like, that just feels like an incredible 1-2 punch there. Yeah. Carlos Rodon, you gotta hope that you're gonna get some type of vintage Carlos Rodon. I think eventually he's gonna figure it out over there in New York. I think finally he's a bit healthier now, which could, obviously be a massive impact for them. But he did have a mildly better bounce back year last year. We're hoping that can get even better in 2025. Then you got the rookie of the year down there, like, as your fourth guy. Like, for most people, they get the rookie of the year, as your starter, and like, that guy could be somebody's ace for all we know, right? But he's down there at number 4 for the New York Yankees, and then doesn't even really matter, but they still got Clark Schmidt and they still got Marcus Stroman down there as well. So, I mean, that rotation to me is, I mean, it's close because Seattle's still very, very good, but like, if not number 1 in the American League, like, certainly number 2.
Yeah, I like it. Also, when you were listing out that rotation, it reminded me of a conversation when, like, Max Fried was signed to the Yankees. How everyone's like, oh, well, the Yankees are just putting together the worst postseason rotation in all of baseball, because Max Fried in the postseason is a 5.10 ERA over how many starts? 12. That's a decent sample size. So he gets beat up a lot. And then people were saying, like, oh, like him and Cole, worst rotation in baseball. And I look back, I just looked up Cole's numbers. Like, I mean, he's had a couple bad series, because it's only 1 or 2 starts he has in a series. But overall, 2.77, ERA and a whip of like 1.02.
In the postseason?
In the postseason.
That's fucking phenomenal.
That's phenomenal. And even in this past in the World Series, he had an ERA of 0.71. Guys, those were not earned runs in the 5th inning. Even though it was part of his fault that runs came in, they still were not earned.
Everybody's just thinking about that one play over there with him and Rizzo, and that's where they're basing this off of right now. But now, no more Anthony Rizzo. You got Paul Goldschmidt over there. Paul Goldschmidt, he's gonna direct the traffic and make sure that Garrett Cole gets the bag next time. So I mean, the rotation for me, okay, fine, you have these dumb arguments about the postseason. I disagree with all that. I think the rotation is phenomenal, and that lineup, yes, you're missing Soto, and I think that an argument can certainly be made that the lineup isn't as potent as it was last year with Soto, but I think that you spread it out a lot more, right? If you get, I'm not asking for MVP Cody Bellinger, but just if you get, some version of serviceability from Cody Bellinger, along with some version of serviceability from Paul Goldschmidt, you get a full season of Jazz Chisholm Jr. batting at the top of your lineup, right?
Yeah.
Like, it just feels a lot deeper than it was last year.
Well, you know why? It's because you look at this lineup and you go, I recognize all those names.
Yeah.
And they are guys that are proven. Now, I want to talk about Paul Goldschmidt. I mean, yeah, obviously last year was a down year. I mean, even the last 2 years have kind of been steep fall-offs. In 2022, this guy had an OPS of 981. That led the NL. Can you believe it?
I think he was the MVP that year. Yeah.
Literally the MVP. And we're like, wow, Paul Goldschmidt at 34, MVP, hell yeah. Then the last 2 years, just literally down more than a 100 OPS, like almost 170 OPS, drops down to 810, then drops down another 100 OPS to 716. Do you think that his best days are behind him, or maybe a new change of scenery because he's out of St. Louis that, sorry for lack of a better term, but that cancer of like an organization right now, he might get a little bit better.
His best years are behind him because I don't think he's going to win MVP again, but that doesn't mean that he's still not going to be very good. He could still get back to what he did in 2023 right there with, kind of like a low 800 OPS. I could see that from Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah.
Now, I could also see the other flip side of things where it's like I just can't catch the fastball anymore because I am 36, 37 years old at this point in time, and that is definitely, something that could be a problem for him. However, I believe in the Hall of Fame talent that is there from Goldschmidt. We have seen many times like these veteran players that just they're going to Cooperstown, that they're Hall of Famers, right? It's like they get that kind of resurgence later in their career as well. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see like a vintage Paul Goldschmidt year. Maybe not the MVP levels of production, but I think that he could definitely be very serviceable for the Yankees batting 4th or 5th or wherever he's going to be.
You brought up a good point with the fastball. I'm looking at all those like really great years he had. Obviously, in the MVP year, he had a fastball run value of 22, and then the last 2 seasons where he's fallen off, -3, -3. So maybe the age is starting to get to him. It's 2 back-to-back years, but if you just gave me what you did last year, I mean, it's still better than Anthony Rizzo. So, and again, like Cody Bellinger, the difference between him and Paul Goldschmidt is Cody Bellinger is still 29. He can still catch up to the fastball. And, he's, again, one of those favorite guys where you roll a dice and you're okay with it. You're paying for the big, roll. It's like a big lottery ticket you just purchased right here from the Yankees. $25 million now, lottery ticket that you're spending. And maybe he provide some value. Right now they have him slot in the 5th spot. Maybe he jumps up to the 4th spot and protects Aaron Judge, hopefully, at some point this year.
It all depends how they're doing. I mean, like, I could see any one of Goldschmidt, Bellinger, Stanton, any one of those guys being like the 4th hitter, just depending on like who's showing up this year. It's like, is it Stanton again? All right, you're moving up. If it's Bellinger, great. We don't care. But that's what I mean. Like they have multiple other options, whereas when it was just Soto and just Judge, I mean, like if Judge goes down with an injury, which he's been known to do in the past, you're kind of cooked. If Soto does that, it's like you're cooked, and I think that now, like, you'd still probably be in a pretty rough spot if Judge did go down with an injury, because he's Aaron Judge. But I do think that there's a lot more depth to this lineup and a lot more, I don't want to say promise necessarily, but just like other guys that are capable of getting it done if Aaron Judge happens to go 0 for that day. Well, there's other dudes in here that could actually contribute.
Yeah, I mean, look, like, no one's going to disrespect Paul Goldschmidt or Cody Bellinger or even Giancarlo Stanton for that matter not bad. Like, you're going to give those guys a lot of respect as a pitcher. Like, you don't really want to come inside too much on those guys. Like, you're going to go away and away and away. So you're going to have to challenge somebody. It's a pick your poison kind of thing. And, of course, we've got to see how the season plays out and how their numbers shape up. But, I mean, look, regardless, you know, if you were to match up this lineup with the one last year, like it's kind of equal because again I don't really know what Paul Goldschmidt and Bellinger, but the fact is you made up for it. You made up for
it, man. It's
and then
like
you got then some in your pitching.
You lost one of the best players ever to hit free agency.
Yeah.
The guy who has the highest contract in sporting history.
Yeah.
And I don't even think that it's a bad thing. Like that is an impressive work from the New York Yankees front office right there. So honestly, tip of the cap to them. Now we're going to be bouncing around between winners and losers, and we just got your biggest winner right there, which is super fair. Let's move on to the biggest loser then that you have going into this thing. There's a couple teams, and we do have we got to shout out this ESPN article. Jeff Passan has been making our jobs very easy because he's listed out a bunch of different winners and losers and everything like that. Is your biggest loser on his list? Do you have somebody else, or what are you thinking here?
Man, it's tough to say. Again, bias coming in. I want to say it's the Toronto Blue Jays, and there's an insane amount of reasons I can give you. Maybe we'll get into that a bit later. But again, just for the sake of being a little bit different, I do think the biggest losers here are the Baltimore Orioles for the reason that you didn't hit that next tier of what you should have been doing in your organization. We've talked about this before. Like, you were on the great, trajectory of you have these young guys in your system up at the big league level. The one glaring hole, kind of reminds me of the Boston Red Sox here, the one glaring hole was your rotation. And it's not been just this year, but it's been last year. And you did address that with Corbin Burns, and you had a great season because of it. But then you lose Corbin Burns. And then what do you do to go replace Corbin Burns? Well, you kind of split him up in a different way. You turn him into Charlie Morton, who, mind you, is 41 years old right now and had a 4.19 ERA last year, and Tomoyuki Soguno, I don't know how to pronounce his name yet, who was kind of a not really highly touted pitcher. Well, highly touted when he was coming out of Japan, but not really up on the big free agent, rankings for MLB. For me, it's not terrible rotation. You got to hope that Grayson Rodriguez becomes your guy, but there's no locked-in ace that I'm looking at right now, and that's tough. You need pitching is what brings you to the postseason and what wins you in the postseason. You need that next step to go and make your team that next level.
Well, yes, I do think so. I'm going to push back a little bit on that. Pitching is what wins you in the postseason, because I hear you and I get it, and pitching wins championships and everything like that. Mm-hmm. But in the recent years, we have seen the team that hits the most home runs go far.
However, who's going to hit more? You're throwing out guys that could give up the most home runs, So.
Also a fair point. I do think that the strength, though, of Baltimore is always going to be that offense, regardless of what they did this offseason. That being said, though, I think that there still needs to be some more additions made to that rotation. I just, it's tough to get behind, a 41-year-old Charlie Morton, even though I've liked what Charlie Morton's done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he'll pitch some innings and stuff, but one tiny little baby injury for that guy and his season could be completely derailed, and that could happen at any moment. And even if he is fully healthy, I don't expect 200 innings out of him or anything like that.
No.
I just don't know where those quality innings from Corbin Burns are going to be made up.
Yeah, and I know you're thinking about the Dodgers too, what they did with their pitching. They didn't have a stellar rotation, but what they did have was a phenomenal bullpen. And the Orioles bullpen isn't as lethal as it used to be. Yeah, they're getting Felix Bautista back this year. That's great. Let's see what he can do. And then the only other notable guys that have decent stats are Keegan Atkin and Yainer Cano. But then after that, I don't see a single guy with an ERA below 4. Everyone's 4, 5, 4, 5. You gotta have some things go right for you in the pitching, but obviously it doesn't feel good going to season when you're kind of hoping for things to go right.
Yeah, I definitely hear that, man. I do think that ultimately, I personally don't have Baltimore Orioles as my biggest loser because yes, they could be doing more, but I still think that they're a postseason team. I
Sure,
still
yeah.
think that I do still think that they're probably going to be going to the playoffs more times than not, and for that reason, I don't think that they're the biggest loser. That being said, though, they have a prime opportunity right now to potentially become a juggernaut in the American League or win the American League East. Now, they still could do that with the team they currently have, but you're going to need all of your young guys, all of your rookies, your lineup to be kind of undeniably the best offense in baseball, and that is asking a lot. Getting, one or two more guys in that pitching staff would go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll quote. I'm literally finding Josh Donaldson's quote here. Love that guy, former Toronto Blue Jay MVP. Look, from his words exactly, this isn't the try league. This is the get it done league. You could try to throw out a good team, but you got to get it done. I think that's the next step I'm talking about right here. It's great. You could be competitive and go to the postseason, but it's not the try league. It's the get it done league.
Yeah, I agree, man. And that front office, the management does need to get it done when it comes to spending money, making trades, acquiring quality guys for that rotation. I'm going to be very interested to see what does happen with that team if they walk into the season and, oh, God forbid, Grayson Rodriguez blows out his arm. Well, is our season cooked? Are we done now? How are you going to navigate that? Because it doesn't feel like you have enough depth to withstand 162.
And that's another thing, right? I'm curious to see how this rotation plays out. The way we're looking at right now is it's all a wild card. Anyone could go up. No one looks consistent to me in this rotation, this bullpen even. It's going to be, well, let's see what we got come May, and then let's go probably address it at the deadline. Or maybe they're not done yet. Maybe they go add somebody else. But, we're getting to that point now where you're starting to shape out your rotation. But let's see what they got, and we'll see if the offense is good enough to carry this pitching staff.
I think it will be in the regular season anyways. I would love to see them, though, go and pick up a Jack Flaherty. I'd just be instilled with so much more confidence in that team if they got that guy. And even then, it's I look at the rotation, I'm like, well, maybe this isn't a finished product. But if you bring in a Jack Flaherty, then I think that, one more acquisition at the trade deadline, for instance, and it's okay, now we're fully here. Now we're ready to go. Now we can make a run.
Yeah, they definitely need to. I think over the weekend, though, I think Jack Flaherty, there was something that came out that he was very unlikely to come back to the Orioles, which they need because that's the last kind of locked-in guy. I mean, even him, he's kind of wavy, a little inconsistent because of injuries in his career. But, still, that was, the only sure thing. But, yeah, the rumors out there is that, this is according to Jeff Hoffman, or not Jeff Hoffman, excuse me. Then that's a different thing I'm reading. Jack Flaherty, the Baltimore baseball, Rich Dubroff, who's someone in Baltimore, I guess, has a close ear on things there, saying it's unlikely. Okay, there you go.
Well, if you are the Baltimore Orioles management, figure it out, make it likely. Now, that's your biggest loser right now, but I do need to push back on you quite a bit because ultimately I don't think anybody's a bigger loser than the Toronto Blue Jays. Maybe the Seattle Mariners, and we talked about this in a previous one. I do think that they are also running this offseason horrendously when you look at the fact that you have the best pitching rotation in baseball. It's all homegrown. It's all controllable. It's actually so frustrating to see that.
The only difference between, I'd say, it's funny, we actually talked about this too, the Baltimore Orioles and the Seattle Mariners, they're built completely differently on different sides of the ball. Pitching for the Seattle Mariners, Orioles for the offense, and the thing that's so frustrating and why they're losing is they can't complete the other side, no matter what.
Yeah, and
granted, the Orioles are actually winning, though.
That's the difference for me is, I look back at last year's ERA. I don't want to get too far off topic here, but last year's ERA, the Baltimore Orioles were 14th in baseball. Now, granted, they lost Corbin Burns, right? Maybe that dips off a little bit. But Seattle's offense was anemic. They were fucking terrible. They were 29th in batting average and runners in scoring position horrendous.
Yeah.
So it's just when you have such a discrepancy like that, you got to make a change.
Right.
That being said, though, I'm still going to highlight the Toronto Blue Jays for being fucking morons this offseason and being the biggest losers. Jeff Passan, who is, probably the most reputable reporter in all of baseball, he starts off this article talking about the Blue Jays saying an unmitigated disaster. And that is exactly how I would describe this team, this offseason, the management, the energy. Everything about the Toronto Blue Jays is just one unmitigated disaster. They claimed that they were going to be competitive in 2025, which we are in right now, and yet they haven't made a single free agent move other than bringing in Jimmy Garcia, who they traded away last year, and who, like, let's face it,
winners of that trade right there.
Winners of the trade, yeah, but, like, not really going to move the needle. And the one other move that they made was trading away their second best last year offensive player in Spencer Horwitz for a defensive first, Andres Jimenez, who had a 600 OPS last year.
600 OPS back-to-back years, and it's funny, like it's funny, the management of the Toronto Blue Jays, going to show how incompetent they are. When they trade for Andres Jimenez, they tried to sell it in a way that, like, we like his bat. We really see good things out of his bat, but you go to his Baseball Savant, and I find nothing but bad things about his bat.
It's terrible.
Like, even when he had that good year in 2022, the expected numbers were showing that it was luck that was happening. Like, he was getting a little bit lucky, and then, of course, in the last 2 years, everything kind of falls into place because he has no power, and he was getting lucky with the batting average, so he's really just a bad hitter. Anyways,
yes.
Not to digress, but that's just, again, more incompetence and failures. Yeah, that's the biggest move, but it doesn't solve the solution, which is their offense. Right?
Yeah, no, and that is ultimately why Toronto is the biggest loser for me, because you look at some of the stuff that they could have done, or, I guess still could do. They miss on Soto, so they can't do that anymore. You miss out on Corbin Burns. You miss out on various other pieces so far this offseason. You could extend Guerrero. Doesn't look like that's going to be happening anytime soon.
Right.
You could make some big time acquisition with an Alex Bregman. It feels like you're being used as leverage right there.
Yep.
Like they're just getting fucked from like every angle right now. It feels like.
And Jeff Passan's kind of wondering why. I mean, he's not as connected as the Blue Jays. Day to day, he kind of covers all MLB, but he's wondering why too. Like, how could you have all these great facilities in a wonderful city and a really expensive management and ownership, but you can't get anything done? And we were just talking about, and I said this right before this podcast, incompetence. Like, the guys running the show are just so incompetent. They cannot get. Granted, like they're put themselves in a spot where they can't do anything. I just made a video on Blue Jays today talking about this. Like, why does nobody want to sign here and play here? Because you don't have a future with Vladdy. You had a losing ball team last year, and also the other elements of you live in Canada.
Well, let me quote Jeff Passan right here, because he talks exactly about this and saying, and with an uninspiring farm system, multiple free agent players took notice, and next to no foundational players under contract beyond 2025. He's talking about Vladdy. He's talking about Bo. Ultimately, the good is counterbalanced by the not so good.
Exactly.
So when you look at, we got good facilities, we got money, we got other shit.
Yeah.
That's all good, but you're a terrible run ball team with no future, and we don't know where you're going, so not so good.
That's another thing we haven't really talked about with Blue Jays is not only you have no future with Bo and Vlad, but your farm system is terrible.
Yeah.
And that's what, when they traded away for the last, it was 2020, 2021, it was mostly 2021, 2022, not so much 2023, 2024, but like they traded away a lot of their guys.
Yes.
Right? And they already didn't have a big farm system to begin with after Bo and Vlad came up. They traded away a lot of their guys. And what you needed to do was to then pay the money for the guys that were currently there up on your team. And they didn't do that. And you had the money and you didn't do it. And that's the problem. So now it's like, okay, well, these guys are leaving, but we have nobody left because we traded them all away.
Exactly, yeah. It's got to be one or the other, right? And when you're talking about like these bigger free agents like a Bregman, who's going to be there for like 6 years, or like a Soto who's going to be there for, like over a decade type thing.
Yeah.
Well, for them, like having Guerrero locked down is obviously important and they want that. But if you don't have Guerrero locked down, well, you know what? Maybe if you have like a top 5 farm system in baseball, or maybe if you have like, a couple like really elite prospects that are coming up in a year from now, I can get behind that, because I know that it's like, well, we're gonna have some elites joining me very soon, and like this is the wave. I'm gonna be the one. I'm gonna be like the first guy to jump in and start this new wave. But that's not the case.
No.
So you have to have one of those two things, either, your foundational stars locked up, or an elite farm system that you can sell to these free agents and be like, all right, listen, we might not be good right now, but 2026, 2027 comes around, let me tell you, like, these guys are going to be elite. We have none of that.
Yeah, no. I mean, you've got a guy, Arelis Martinez, who got suspended for PEDs, and you've got Ricky Tiedemann, who has a broken elbow, Tommy John, and he won't be back till 2026. That's your farm system.
That's what you're selling right now.
That's uninspiring.
I remember hearing about Juan Soto, right? And obviously there was a bunch of stuff that came out about Soto, but there was one thing that was saying it's like ultimately, part of the decision between the Yankees and the Mets was that he felt the Yankees farm system was a bit uninspiring compared to the New York Mets, and he liked the future there, right? And when you are talking about these long-term free agents, like that comes into play, and that is going to come into play with a Bregman, maybe with a Santander as well. You got to sell them a bit on the future and be like, look, we won 74 games last year. You don't want to be on that team. We don't want that to happen again. But in a couple of years from now, like, we're going to be up there for the division again.
I know. And, man, like, it is a disaster, and really there's nothing they can do about it other than rebuild because it's all over. But that's the thing is for people who don't know, the Blue Jays are in the money-making business. You know, like they're not in the let's win a World Series business. They're in the money-making business. And their money right now, they got to get a return on investment after all the renovations they did at the Rogers Center where they play. So they don't care. It comes down to that.
They don't
No
care.
one's factoring that in.
Yes, that's the thing. They don't really care that much, so it is an unmitigated disaster, but it's one that they brought on themselves. Now, Jeff Passan does finish his whole blurb about Toronto by saying that eventually someone's going to have to take their money, which I agree with. I do think eventually someone's going to want it, but only if they decide, Blue Jays, I mean, to give you an actual, like, decent offer, which they have been very, very cheap with doing so far this offseason. They're offering, kind of at what market value is with everybody else, but then obviously they're falling out of the race because, well, I prefer to go to the Diamondbacks. Or I prefer to go to the Dodgers. Or I prefer to go to the Yankees or the Mets or what. Because, I mean, they're just better built, right? So they have to realize, somebody's going to take your money eventually, but you still got to offer $20, $30 million more than the other guy because they're just more promising than you are.
Yeah, like you got to, if you're Rogers, the ownership of the Blue Jays, you got to ask yourself, is sending $100 million to Anthony Santander going to give me more than $100 million in jersey sales tickets and all that kind of stuff? That's what they're weighing right now. They're like, is it really going to?
And it probably won't, honestly.
It probably won't because, hey, guys, if you're Blue Jays fans, there's still opening day tickets. They're still not sold out yet. Can you believe that?
I can definitely believe that, actually. Yeah, I mean, Again, like why would I want to
watch
go?
this team?
Seriously,
it's a disaster.
Biggest losers for me, everybody. Yes, there's bias in there, but honestly, like I think it is very warranted. Before we move on and talk about some other big winners, big losers, other offseason moves, let's give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Betway. Everybody, hit your picks, knock it out of the park. You got some lines for Wild Card Weekend. Is that right?
Wild Card Weekend, everybody, starts this Saturday, and I believe this is the early slate. Yeah, this is the early.
I think it's the first game.
The first game, Chargers and the Texans, everybody. You got Texans at home taking on the Chargers, but they're not the favorites. They're the underdogs. So the money line is 2.3 for the Texans, and the Chargers 1.62. A lot more respectable, very close. The spread right now is plus 3.5 for the Texans, and obviously negative 3.5 for the Chargers right now. Very even lines. Where are you kind of leaning in on this?
It's a tough one, man, because the Texans have been very I've been using this word a lot because Jeff Passan used it, uninspiring recently. The second half of the season, it feels like they're just not playing with a whole lot of confidence, and they're just not playing very, very well right now. Granted, the Chargers, they've had their ups and downs. I do think that Vegas has done a pretty good job here at kind of putting this line right where I'm flip-flopping back and forth quite a bit. Maybe because they're the home team, I like the plus 3.5 on the Texans, but it's tough for me to hit the button on that one just because I know that they haven't been playing great right now.
Maybe I have some bias because every time I decide to put money on the Texans, they lose it for me. So maybe I'm a little bit uninspired, but I honestly think the Chargers are going to walk in with Jim Harbaugh. It's Jim Harbaugh, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to walk in and they're going to take it. Negative 3.5 seems actually pretty good for me for the Chargers. That's 2.05, so a little bit more than double your money. I kind of like it. I think
Herbert's been playing good, man.
Herbert
and Ladd McConkey are linking up at will right now.
You have one of the lesser offenses in the last 5 weeks in the Houston Texans going up against the best defense in football.
That's true. That's true.
Like I could see this going where they win this like 24-6. And it's over. Yeah. So give me the Chargers spread.
No, that's super fair, man. You guys let us know in the comments down below. Who do you have in that one, and who are you riding with to win the Super Bowl when it's all said and done?
Yeah, guys, make sure to scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the details section to join the action. Available in Ontario only. Must be 19 plus. please play responsibly. Now, I said my winner and loser. You said your loser. Let's hear your biggest winner of the offseason.
Well, I mean, I do honestly think that the shout-out needs to go to the New York Mets for, locking up the biggest contract ever. That needs to be a tip of the cap right there. And I do think that that's just so good for them in terms of stealing him away from the Yankees as well, right? Like there's just such an element of twisting the knife involved there. However, we would be remiss if we didn't bring up the LA Dodgers here and what they've been capable of doing so far. I mean, to go out and to get Blake Snell, to go out and to bring back Teoscar Hernandez, even though you didn't need it, to go out and to lock up Hyun Kim.
They just did that.
Who just did that, right?
Eh?
That's the. If you're not familiar with him, he is a guy over there in Korea. He was playing really good ball over there. He got posted the last 2 years. He had an OPS right at that 840 mark over there in Korea. He's 26 years old right now. Yeah. And the crazy part about this is they're paying him like $22 million for a 3-year deal. He's going to come over here. He might not even be in the starting lineup for the LA Dodgers. At this point, it's just like this is their utility player, and for anybody else, this would be like a big signing for the Blue Jays.
Oh, I know.
But for them, this is their literal utility guy, and they've already come out and said as well, it's like we're not rushed to go and trade anybody, because people were asking, it's like, well, now that you got Hyun Kim, are you going to trade Gavin Lux or Chris Taylor or something like that? They're like, no. We're just going to hold all of them.
Well, why? Why would we trade any of it? Isn't the point to win the World Series?
So that's the point,
They're I brought up the Josh Donaldson quote. They are firmly into the get it done league.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They have been getting it done they got it done last year, and they want to get it done, this year and the following year and the next year. There's no point for them to go make any trades or anything. I mean, I have to look at their contract and see who's coming up and who's expiring, but their bench is Austin Barnes. That's their backup catcher to, Will Smith. Solid, good guy. I mean, not over 264 batting average for a catcher is great.
Who's your backup? So who cares?
Backup, who cares? Miguel Rojas is a very solid, middle infielder. He filled in for a lot last year. I think it was for Gavin Lux, and he batted 283. His OPS was 7. I'm doing quick math, 47 or 747. Yeah, that's phenomenal. Then you had Hyun Kim.
Yep.
Awesome. And then you have Chris Taylor. He had a down year, but Chris Taylor is your worst guy, and he is also on a contract that's pretty good. There's nothing wrong with this team right now. There's literally no holes. They go and they get back Blake Treinen. You add Blake Snell to rotation with Yamamoto, Glasnow. Don't forget Ohtani.
Yeah.
And then don't forget Gonsolin and May, who were hurt all last year, that showed incredible upside. I actually can't find a single hole. All of their guys in their bullpen have an ERA below 4. I know ERAs and everything, but I'm just looking at Fangraphs. The worst guy is Michael Grove. But he's their prospect that's touted. Who cares?
That's the thing, man. I just, it's so hard to build a team as good as the Dodgers have done it. And what's insane is that from last year to this year, they got better. And they won the World Series last year. And, usually you win the World Series, it's oh, now we're going to lose some guys to free agency. And it's we got to cut some stuff and whatever. And no, they're still firmly adding, and you knew that they were going to do it the second that they signed Ohtani and gave him that deferred deal of only $2 million a year. Yeah. We all knew that it was go for the next decade of time. As long as this guy's an LA Dodger, our mission is to win the World Series every single year. Yeah. And they're gonna. They're just gonna, because let's not forget either, he still hasn't chosen yet, but they're still heavy favorites to get Roki Sasaki as well, on top of all of this. You add that guy to the mix, for cheap. It's such an easy sell for the LA Dodgers, and that is credit to the management. Now, granted, they do have some geographical benefits and everything like that, but for all the arguments as to why nobody wants to come to the Toronto Blue Jays, it's completely flipped for the LA Dodgers. They're calling you. Those free agents are calling you because they want to go there. Yeah. Teoscar Hernandez could have accepted a contract to come back to the Toronto Blue Jays for, I think, the exact
$5 million more
per year. Literally more, but he doesn't wanna, because why the fuck would you, when it's you're on a team as stacked as this in LA? And again, we can cry and we can wham about it, all that stuff, but it is credit to the management and the front office for building that winning culture and having these free agents just so desperately want to play here. That is why Sasaki's going to sign there. That is why Hyun Kim just signed there. And that's why you're going to see them win over 100 games next year and then probably sign more free agents next offseason.
For sure. I mean, I was just thinking, there's some great teams in the last few decades of baseball. I wasn't watching this team when I was growing up because I was like a little kid. Didn't really pay attention to the rosters and comparing who was on what. Like, I'm not that kind of history nut. But, like, I think about the Yankees in the early 2000s, early 2000s, late 90s. Like, that was a dynasty. And then, you think about the Houston Astros in the late 2010s, early 2020s. That was a dynasty team right there that had great pieces. This, I think, to me, is the best baseball team I have ever seen in my entire days watching baseball. Now, that doesn't mean much to some of you out there because I've only been watching baseball since 2011. So it may not mean a lot. But truly, this is the best team in all baseball. I'm looking at their fan graphs right now, and they have rankings for players overall in the entire league. Ohtani's number 1. Freddie Freeman's number 20. Teoscar Hernandez is ranked 25, if you believe it. Mookie Betts is 38. Wow, they have Teoscar Hernandez over Mookie. That's
actually disrespectful.
That's very disrespectful, yeah. Will Smith is 83. Even Michael Conforto is 118. I don't know how, but he is.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that they got that guy, too.
Yeah, they got that
guy and Teo.
Yeah.
So if Michael Conforto does anything, it's like, well, we're winning.
We're winning. Dude, and they also signed back Tommy Edman, who they traded for last year.
Who's incredible in the playoffs, by the way. You want to talk about playoffs and stuff? That guy's amazing.
That's the thing. When they go to the playoffs, any one of these guys, if not multiple of them, can have moments. Like Tommy Edman had moments. Teoscar Hernandez had moments. Mookie Betts obviously was consistent. It's all holy hell. Ohtani, the funny thing enough, Ohtani really didn't show up in the playoffs.
He had a couple moments, but it wasn't a major contributor,
He hit low 200s.
Yeah.
Really, maybe one home run or so. But then there was obviously Freddie Freeman who had a bum ankle and then showed up in the World Series. Like, anyone could show up at any given moment, and we could be, and we are, no, I mean, we could be, we are going to be watching just the best baseball you've ever seen from the LA Dodgers for the next decade. And I'm jealous that I am on the East Coast and I have to stay up to 10 o'clock at night to watch these guys, because if I could watch them at 7, I'd watch them as much as possible.
Yeah, it is fully entertaining, and I get why there is such a influx of baseball followers following this team right now, because it is fucking amazing. Like, they are just so dominant, and when you look around, like, yeah, there's some other good teams. The Phillies are good, and the Mets are trying, and they should be good as well. It's so hard to picture anyone being actually capable of knocking the LA Dodgers off when it comes to crunch time in the NLCS, because that's where they're going to go. They're going to be there. They're going to get the bye and win 110 games and everything like that. Like, they're going to be deep in the playoffs again. I just don't see any reality where these guys don't end up in the World Series, because even when their rotation is to the fucking shits, like, literally everybody's hurt, we don't have anybody at all, and we're worried about it, doesn't matter. They still win the World Series, and now the rotation could arguably be right up there with Seattle, especially if they get Sasaki as well. So, I mean, it's crazy.
Honestly, like, well, obviously they're the clear favorites, I think, in all of baseball. I mean, if you look at their line, they're over-under, it's over 100.
They're like 10 more wins above any other team
and
from Vegas.
And that's dominant. Now, postseason, everything went right for them. Anything can go right or wrong in the postseason because it is such a short series. But I will say the one thing against the Dodgers is that they are in a very competitive NL league, like the NL. If they get to the World Series, it's a cakewalk because the AL is not even close, and they beat the best team, which was the New York Yankees, easily. They beat them easily because they do. They got a good NL over there. Dodgers. Don't forget about the Padres. Yes, they're one of the biggest losers on Passan's list, but they're still there. The Giants are trying to come up. The Diamondbacks are one of the winners on Passan's list. You still got the Phillies. We all forgot about them. You got the Braves are still there. The Mets, obviously, and then the Cubs are trying to get in the mix. You still got the Brewers. Like, dang, if they get to the World Series, I'm betting all my money on that they'll win it.
Well, I hear you, man. I still think that they're going to be capable of getting the World Series regardless. Like, I hear all those teams, and I agree with you. But what the wild thing is, right, is that they're still going to win over 100 games matching up against all those other teams.
Right.
And then it just goes to show that it's like, I mean, you can beat the other best in the NL consistently, which they're going to do. I don't see any other reality unless some major injuries happen or some crazy shit. I mean, listen, that's why we watch the games, right? There's weird stuff that happens in sports all the time.
I know.
So
especially in baseball, like, there's things that you just cannot predict ever. I mean, hell, even when, like, the Diamondbacks first went to the World Series 2 years ago, like, who even saw that coming? Like, crazy things happen, but that's baseball. That's why we watch,
Exactly, man. But they are obviously a biggest winner right now for those LA Dodgers. Now, you did bring up the Arizona Diamondbacks. I have them as a winner as well. Not quite as big as LA, but honestly, whenever you can come in there and kind of sneak away Corbin Burns from everybody, like, they were stealthy with it. They were real, like, ninja-like when they stole that guy away. Like, that's obviously going to be a major win for them.
And you know what's funny is that the speculation out there is that Burns contacted Arizona.
Wow.
They weren't even in the mix. Like, they were just kind of like, well, we're chilling. We got to deal with this whole Jordan Montgomery situation. But Burns was like, well, I'm not getting the money from San Fran, and my wife and kids live in Phoenix. Let's hit up the Diamondbacks. They're a good team. And and he basically, the rumor out there is like, if he kind of just laid it out, like, if you give me this number, I'll sign right now. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, it fell into their lap, like they kind of got lucky with it, right? Yeah. And like, again, like, that's going to happen every now and again. You're just going to get lucky, and they did happen to get lucky. It's just so happens that Corbin Burns has a house over there in Phoenix, Arizona. So, I mean, credit where credit is due, though, right? When they had the opportunity, they locked it down. I mean, again, going back to the Toronto Blue Jays, apparently Vladdy's put the number on the table, and they don't want to hit that up either. So,
so hilarious.
Arizona, like, same thing happened. Corbin Burns walked in, gave him the number, and they said, sure.
Dude, imagine if you were the Mets or the Yankees or the Dodgers, and Vladdy came up to you and said, "Here's my number, hit it, and I'll sign." They'd do it.
They would, because that's the thing. Like, that's the difference between those managements, the winners of the offseason, and the losers, right? And the losers are just, they're either too stingy or too incompetent to get any of this shit done. But yeah, Arizona should be a very solid team next year, and their offseason so far has been a good one.
Yeah.
Speaking of those, Padres, though, otherwise in that division, been pretty quiet. Been losing out on a couple pieces as well here. So, I mean, I still think they're going to be good. I wouldn't classify them as, like, the biggest loser, but, it would be nice to see them try to keep up with the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers.
It's kind of the same argument, maybe a little bit different because different team makeups is like the Orioles, where it's like, you're right there, guys. Like, if you just do a little bit more, like, you can maybe change this whole organization around because, like, maybe for a time in last postseason, I thought they were going to beat the Dodgers. Like, they were up 2-1 in the NLDS, right? Like, they had a really good team, and and that's the thing. Like, you were that close, maybe one more player or whatever, and you beat the Dodgers or whatever. You can't really count for that, but like, you got to make a move, and you're not really doing it. So
yeah, and I think this is all magnified as well because you're seeing Arizona go out and be aggressive, and because you're seeing the Dodgers be the Dodgers,
the
right?
Giants too.
And it's like, well, kind of, the Giants too. You know what I mean? It's like, and then you got the Padres that are just kind of like standing still and maybe even falling down a peg,
right?
So like, I don't think the Padres are as big a loser as the Seattle Mariners are, or the Blue Jays, or somebody else. But when you compare them to the competition around them, it's like, well, they're all getting better. And you're not.
Exactly, right? I mean, and also one of the bigger winners here, the Cubs that were like kind of mentioned in this article. Again, like they did some pretty interesting stuff. They got over Kyle Tucker. That was awesome. But they also traded away Cody Bellinger. I think still it's a net win for them.
That's a big net win.
It's a big net win for sure. And I mean, they're gonna have to. That's the thing in the NL Central. That's all it takes. Bring over a guy like Kyle Tucker, boom, there's 10 more wins.
Yeah, I mean, and I genuinely think the Cubs are going to be sneaky. I don't think that they're any like World Series, contender at this point. Like, obviously I got to see them like show up in the regular season, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if, come September, late September time when divisions are being decided, if the Cubs are right there and, I don't know, high 80s wins and winning the Central type thing. Like, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's wide open, right? Like, I mean, the Brewers, you could argue, are taking a step back because they lost Devin Williams. Bullpen pieces on a major impacts on like the total wins. But like, they also lost Willie Adames. That was his core of their team.
That was a big piece right there,
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, like you're kind of stepping back. Cubs are stepping up. Maybe hit the Cubs for winning the AL.
No, I
NL Central,
I actually don't hate that at all, man.
Yeah.
I think that's a bit sneaky. But folks, let us know your thoughts about everything that we talked about in this podcast down below. Who is your biggest winner? Who is your biggest loser from this offseason? Still players on the board: Santander, Bregman, Flaherty, other guys. So there are still moves that could be made to bring some of these losers out of the loser circle, but I mean, they're losers. They're probably going to lose out some more.
It's going to take a lot for these losers because, I mean, no disrespect to those guys, but adding one of those guys doesn't really move the needle too much.
Not a whole lot, but let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please hit that like, smash that subscribe button. We will catch you next time.
Cheers.